Very warm good morning to you, my dear parents. Okay, though this is a little smaller group, I'm sure that those of you attending this program will benefit a lot. We finished two sessions already. One was yesterday evening, and one was just before this. And I saw that the interaction of the parents, the kind of doubts that you all were having, really, what do you call it, confirm the fact that this is something that we need to look forward to in regard to how we bring up our children. Okay, so I'm very happy that we have with us Father Joy Fernandez. Father Joy Fernandez, as I introduced you already on that Career Mark video, is a very, very proficient, wonderful resource person in this field. Okay, he's done a PhD in clinical psychology. So he's a professional clinical psychologist, does a lot of counseling programs with a lot of parents and children. And he's also done his diploma in career counseling, postgraduate diploma in career counseling in the University of Victoria in Australia. And so you'll find that the kind of content Father is sharing with us is something that will help us to anticipate a lot of pitfalls that would arise were we not to take the steps and the practices, the good practices that he's sharing with us. Okay? So whatever doubts you have, you could ask at the end of the session. Though the career mark in itself will take flight from the 8th standard onwards, but this is a good preparation ground for effective parenting. Okay, and it will really prepare your children for the future if you act on the present. Father Joy, welcome and thank you.
Prior to this session, we had another session where we had parents who have smaller children in early childhood. So children standards 5, 6, 7, that is like the middle childhood age group. You can see some of the parents who were there for the previous session are here as well. There may be some repetitions because issues are common across both. However, I will focus more on the areas or examples for areas for middle childhood. That is children standard 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th onwards. As Father Isaac has said, Career Mark is a program that we've initiated for students from standard 8 to 12. So the question is, why at all would we be talking about those issues already for younger children? The point that I'm trying to make is this. Life is a continuous and it's an ongoing process. And if we want to have a stable future, we've already got to build up the basics during the earlier years. So career issues will tend to get more difficult if certain issues have not been tackled during early childhood and middle childhood. So allow me to briefly review some areas of early childhood, because some of those areas could become very apparent, especially during middle childhood. So we are looking at life as an ongoing process. Now, independent of whether a person chooses career A or B or C or D, there are certain competencies. Competencies means abilities that any person needs to have. And these basic abilities are used across different life situations and across different circumstances. So the basic is to have a sense of self-confidence. For a person to function in any field, if self-confidence is lacking, even a very competent person can fall back. So confidence needs to be developed. But together with confidence, confidence also comes from having some basic competencies or basic abilities. So the abilities are what I've projected on the screen: reading, writing, communicating, planning, organizing, doing practical tasks, and working in teams. Now, as I pointed out, all these can already be initiated during early childhood, but during middle childhood, the very same abilities take on a slightly different focus, which I will be explaining during this session today. Now, I guess you are having children who are from standard 5 to 7, that's middle childhood. At the same time, I just want to very briefly review some issues of early childhood. Because if those early childhood issues have not been fully attended to, they can create a problem for middle childhood. During the previous session, I explained them more in detail. Here, I'm just mentioning them to say that these need to have been accomplished. So during middle childhood, we need to look in two directions. We need to look backward to ensure that the basic competencies have been achieved, and we need to move forward to prepare the child for the challenges of adolescence, which will be like, when the child gets into the teenage years, 13, 14, whatever. Okay, the next slide. Very briefly, the areas that we need to develop during early childhood are these. I'm mentioning it here, I'm not going to describe it in detail. The sharpness of the senses. So the senses of sight, hearing, taste, touch, smell. So these senses form the basis for all future learning. If there are difficulties with respect to this, not sight in terms of having glasses or no, not hearing in terms of not being able to hear or no, it's being able to distinguish sights, being able to distinguish sounds. That is what we are calling as the acuity of the senses. Another important thing is what we are calling as eye-limb coordination. Say to do anything, to be able to cut a slice of bread, I need to coordinate the movement of my hand, holding the bread with my left hand and move it up and down. I need to coordinate eyes and hands. So, eye motor coordination is important for any practical task that I do. Even if I walk, if my eye motor coordination is not proper, I will keep banging into objects. If my eye motor coordination is not proper, if I'm holding a glass, it will tend to fall through my fingers. That's another important task that generally needs to have been accomplished during early childhood. Language begins to develop during early childhood. We have to carry it further during middle childhood. Bonding with parents and peers develops in early childhood to be developed later. Again, developing feelings of self-worth. I will briefly cover some of these areas as we move. Let me just briefly speak about this. During middle childhood, an area that would need to be sufficiently well developed is this: coordination between the senses of sight, hearing, touch, and movement. If we are having difficulties in any of these areas, they will create difficulties for learning. For example, a child needs to direct the movement of the hands to adjust to what they see. Suppose a ball is thrown at me. I am seeing the ball, I need to adjust body position and I need to adjust my hands in order to catch the ball. That is eye motor movement coordination. Now, I require this ability, or a child requires this ability also to do simple tasks of everyday living. Buttoning a shirt, dressing, tying shoelaces, climbing up the stairs, whatever. So if there are difficulties in this area, it will create a problem in doing practical tasks. The next thing is in the area of language. To be able to do well in language, the child needs to be able to distinguish sounds in terms of sensory ability, and also to connect a sound with a written alphabet. For example, this is what is called connecting a sound and a sight, when I say connection between different senses. So when I hear the word cat, I need to connect the sound k with the letter C. I need to connect the sound a with the letter A, and I need to connect the sound t with the letter T. So if a child has difficulty connecting a sound and a letter, it will create a difficulty for spelling and for writing. So these are the tasks that a child should have accomplished during early childhood. In case there have been difficulties there, it could cause difficulties for future study. So in case there has been deficient development in any of these areas, it will create difficulty here. Difficulty doing practical tasks, as I said, like buttoning or cutting bread or climbing up a stairs. They will also likely create difficulties for attention. So when sensory activities are not fully developed, attention tends to get diminished. So the child might find it difficult to focus on a task for very long, get distracted rather easily. There would be difficulties in reading, writing, and maths. Remember, if there are these, they are probably related to sensory difficulties earlier in life. There can be emotional difficulties as well. Emotional because some of these children can tend to get sad, they can withdraw, other children can get irritable, they can get aggressive. Okay? So there are likely to be any of these difficulties, and they can be associated with improper sensory motor development. And more than that, it affects feelings of self-confidence. When a child is not able to do basic things, then the child feels, I am not good enough. That is the worst thing that can happen when self-confidence gets disrupted. Now let's move forward to middle childhood. So, middle childhood is a time to look back, and if there are deficiencies, you have to fill up the gaps. However, if the development has been smooth and you are not having any of the difficulties I've spoken about, then we can focus on developing other areas. So what are the areas we may want to focus on during middle childhood? Largely play, and I'll explain why play is important. Language and academics, communication and organizing skills, which I'm going to speak a little more elaborately now, discovery of interests and personal qualities, and healthy interaction with peers and parents. Basically, these are the areas I'm going to address now. Okay. In terms of academics, what does a parent need to take note of? Remember, I said if there are problems with reading, writing, they can already start reflecting now very strongly, especially in standard 5. Because up to standard 4, there's a lot of oral work, there's a lot of practical activity. So language difficulties will begin to surface in standard 5, where written work begins to be a little more increased. So here, observe which subjects the child likes and which subjects the child is good at. So subjects that a child likes as well as is good at will become subjects that can give you a direction for future career. At the same time, we need to notice subjects which a child does not like and in which the child is finding difficulty. So, at the earliest, we are not going to wait for standard 9 and 10 to struggle. At the earliest, we would want to help the child in subjects in which the child is weak. So, during middle childhood, notice the subjects where the child is strong, encourage the child in those areas. And in subjects where the child is weak, give the child sufficient help to get through those subjects. For example, not all children like maths and science, but at least till standard 10 you have to pass in maths and science. So give the child, without pushing the child too much, make sure that the child at least passes in those subjects, but strengthen the child's ability in other subjects in which she is good. So for example, the language, the social studies, they can divert the child into another stream, the art streams or the humanities streams. So look at this, but already at middle childhood, we need to notice that this balance has been taken care of. During middle childhood, children need to develop what is called their motor, visual capacities, which are generally developed through exercise and play. Now I'll show you basic exercises for smaller children, which can be done even with children of middle childhood, but for middle childhood we can have additional activities. Let's look at this.
Hopping exercise across all the squares of the ladder is an important and effective way to test locomotor skills and coordination, where the child has to jump with both feet together and keep balance from one end to the other. Here the trainer is going apart together with his legs. So there's coordination across the midline of the body. And here he's doing a second level where his upper body and lower body are coordinating while he goes apart and together. Jumping in and out of the squares is a lot of spatial awareness and coordination. In the form of animal walks, this is an upper body strength exercise. It's the bear walk. A lot of locomotor and gross motor skills are working here. This is the duck walk, which works the lower body, all the large muscles of the lower body. A lower body strength exercise. The crab walk works both the core, the upper and the lower body. Static balance exercises, very important for focus and concentration, as well as testing the balance of the children. Lateral jumps over the small marker is a good dynamic balance exercise, where we see the child is able to jump by keeping his balance when he lands. So balance and coordination. This is a body parts exercise: head, knees, toes, head, cone. It's also for quick reaction, how fast the child processes the information verbally given to him. Another coordination exercise. Left hand and right hand are doing different things, but following the same pattern. This is a level 1 for smaller kids. Jumping over the hurdles is a very good way to test gross motor skills and coordination. Jumping with both feet over the hurdles, keeping your balance while you land. Similarly, jumping with one leg over the hurdles in a running action also is a coordination exercise between the head and the legs to jump over the hurdles. The zigzag run is a good way to test the student's spatial awareness and movement across various planes. This is level 2 of the same exercise, but the turns are sharper and the movement across the planes is deeper with more coordination, balance, and change of direction. In the shuttle run, a child knows the numbers of the cones and he has to run to the particular number and come back quickly, changing direction, keeping balance while he turns. The ball throws a simple hand-eye coordination exercise with different levels where you catch with both hands. Second level is catching with a single hand. Third level is jogging and catching with both hands. Fourth level is jogging, catching with one hand. Fifth level is jogging, clapping and catching with one hand, and it goes on like this, increasing as the age of the child increases.
There's one thing that I notice very often is as the child grows older, parents tend to cut down on their physical activity and say spend a longer time with your books. That may not be the very best idea. Okay. A crucial thing to know is that physical activity plays a big role in stabilizing mental, emotional, and concentration issues. With reference to this is the most basic one. For children of middle childhood, we can take it further. For example, you can do hanging, the child can do pull-ups, the child can do dips, the child can do push-ups, okay? The child can do balancing, like the more yoga type of exercises. Even the exercises with those circles gets a little more complex. So we can use the same equipment but increase the level of difficulty and challenge as the child grows older. The question is why? Why is it important to have this physical activity? Largely, this physical activity, first of all, builds up the musculature of the body. And a good musculature of the body is important for doing any practical tasks. So, for example, if the muscles of the back, shoulders, neck, hands, and arms are not strong, then the child will have posture difficulties. If there is a posture difficulty, there will be an attention difficulty. If there is a posture difficulty, the child is also likely to have handwriting difficulty. So, all these are connected with weak musculature. That's why the first reason is we need to encourage physical activity among children. During the lockdown, this activity has been very much restricted. It may not be a good idea to keep children locked up without physical activity. The second advantage is that though this activity seems to be physical, it is also building up connection between brain areas. For example, there's a brain area controlling sight behind, and there's a brain area controlling movement, which is lateral in the midbrain on both sides. So nerves are already there connecting the areas, but the connectors need to be strong. For example, it is like this. We have fans, we have lights in this room. You can place all the wires there, but if the wires are not connected to the fan, if the wires are not connected to the light, then the light and the fan will either, it will not come on, or if the wires are loosely connected, you will have a problem with flickering, or you'll find the fan is not running correctly. So these activities are actually helping to build up connection between the different sensory areas. So between sight and movement of the hands, etc. That's another crucial benefit. So when these connections have been established through physical activity, they allow sensory messages to pass quickly from the senses, from the sight to the brain, from the brain to the rest of the movement of the body. So it increases reaction time and it helps out in this way. Moreover, if you notice these exercises, they demand concentration. You can't just be walking loosely across the thing when you're jumping across those circles. So, children learn two things. They learn concentration and they learn impulse control. If I run madly, wildly across the room, it's one thing. If I have to jump, I have to look at those squares, I have to concentrate. So it controls my impulses and it also increases and sharpens my concentration. So among smaller children, we have noticed that when we do this activity, children begin to be calmer in the classroom, they tend to be focused and they have less academic difficulties when done earlier. Why am I saying earlier to distinguish from middle childhood? During early childhood, the brain is still open to very quick development because those connections are being formed during early childhood. During middle childhood, you still have a chance, maybe till about the age of 10, 11. So, physical activity is very crucial during the early years of life, especially from the ages of 2 till about 10, because it's building up musculature as well as brain connections during the early years. The next thing is play benefits. Play also requires a lot of regulation, coordination as well as regulation. So all exercise activities come into play. But in addition to that, play has other benefits. First, children learn to interact with each other when they are playing. So social skills develop. I recently got a parent coming to me and saying, a 2-year-old child is already speaking about wanting to die. I said, why? So not 2 years, a second standard child is already speaking about wanting to die. Then when I spoke to the child, what is happening? What is troubling you? I can't play. I can't go out. I can't meet my friends. This child had that exposure during KG and is suddenly feeling that gap. So what the child is missing is the development of social connection with peers, which is very crucial for building up friendships and associations during an early age. The next thing is, when children play, they are also communicating with each other. So it is developing communication among themselves. Thirdly, play, especially organized games like football, basketball, requires a lot of teamwork. So children are learning the basics of cooperation and working in teams. We have noticed that sometimes a player can be extremely good, but if he is not cooperating with his team, that team tends to lose. The team that doesn't have all that good players, but who have good cooperation with each other, fare better than another team where 1 or 2 players are very good, but there's no cooperation. So, children learn the basics of teamwork and of productive activity, especially during their play. So now, I'm building up on that whole area that should have also been begun in early childhood and which continues into middle childhood. Now, this is what we will focus on during middle childhood. Vocabulary, grammatical structure, clear and confident communication. Because now this goes into the language area. During early childhood, I suggested that parents help their children to develop vocabulary, naming different objects. During middle childhood, we need to take that a little further. The first thing is encourage children to verbally describe what is happening at play. For example, when the child comes home from school, can ask the child, what did you do in school today? Which friends did you talk to? What subjects did you learn? What happened on the playground? Now that looks like foolish communication, but actually it's crucial. Two important things are happening. The child is learning to communicate what he or she is experiencing. And second, the child is building up a bond with you. So when a child speaks about what is happening, the child begins to develop a bond with the parent or the caregiver. We can carry the language thing further because now children are big enough to read a newspaper, a magazine, or to explore something on the internet. You can ask them to read an article and to verbally describe it. So when we are doing this, we are helping the child develop two basic activities required across situation: comprehension and communication. So the basic in communication is oral communication, verbally describing what the child has been seeing or experiencing. Now we take that one step further. Communication, where we encourage during middle childhood the child to make presentations. Now this helps enormously. And I've noticed how this has transformed, boys in our boarding. For example, we used to have this Marian month. During the Marian month, during an entire month, the brother would give the boys in groups a theme, like a caption. They would tell them, now you choose your pictures, illustrate that, and create a notice board. They were children standard 6th, 7th, etc. I noticed how the children would bond. They would come running after school, Father, we are going to prepare our notice board. So after school, when they are tired, we give them this time. They learn to do those cutouts. They learn to assemble pictures. But what are they doing? They are learning communication through visuals. So they prepare everything, stick it up, roll it, and keep it in the brother's room. On the day before it has to be put up, at night it is put up, and then the children are very happy. See, my work is displayed. So now they are learning communication through visuals. At other times, those children who are good at drawing, they illustrate things through small drawings that they make. If your child shows an interest in art, you can ask the child to describe different situations through drawings. Those who are more electronically inclined, you can ask them prepare a small PowerPoint presentation. I feel ashamed if a child with good artistic sense looks at mine. There are only words displayed over there. But a child with good, electronic abilities fosters electronic communication to create presentations. So the child can do those presentations and make a presentation in the family. Or the child can make a small presentation on a theme and present it to friends. So we are now building on vocabulary, oral communication, visual communication, and public speaking. So this is where we are carrying this thing further. Something that's very crucial to develop during middle childhood is the ability to organize. Now, I've noticed that children's ability to organize gets built up, first of all, through observation. So, suppose there is a parish event. You have had a parish day. What you can ask the child to answer a series of questions. What happened first? What happened next? What happened next? So the child is observing and is communicating in sequence. Okay? It looks like a silly activity, but the child is developing awareness of temporal sequencing. What happens first, second, third, fourth. Then you can ask the child, what was done? Where was it done? So for example, The football game was done on the football ground. The basketball game was played on the basketball ground. Awareness of spatial organization. The first one is temporal organization, sequencing, where asking the child to note what happened where is what is called spatial organization. Then the next thing is who did it? Attention to persons and what persons are doing. Who does what? And the next thing is how did they do it? So when you ask children questions like these, it begins to prime children to take note of things which they would otherwise take for granted. For example, I want to describe to you the difference between two situations where children did not notice what was happening and children who noticed what was happening. I realized this through little experiments that I did in the boarding in which I was many years ago. So, there was a tournament that was conducted in the boarding, say from 3 o'clock in the afternoon till 7 o'clock. I asked the boys, now tell me what happened and tell me the order in which things happened. So their observations are like this. At the beginning, the tournament manager called all the teams together. Who? Tournament manager. What? Called all the teams together. Then what did he do? He instructed the children about the games that were going to be conducted. He indicated where the games would be played. So game A would be played on this ground, B on that ground, C on that ground. Temporal sequencing combined with spatial sequencing. Okay. And then he gave each of the captains of the team a slip so that the children knew when the first game is completed, where to go after the first game to the second and the third game. That is again organization of movement. Now this is what the children observed. Then they also noticed that it was not only about play. I said, tell me everything that happened. They said there were two boys who were operating the sound system. So who and what were they doing? Two boys operating the sound system. And what did those boys do? Those boys adjusted the microphone when different people were speaking. Between games, they were also playing music of different types. So they have observed that. Okay. Then they noticed there were other boys who were in charge of the scoreboard. So they said, what did the scoreboard boys do? After a game was completed, they ran, they met the referees and got which teams won and which teams lost. And then they got the scores and they kept updating the scoreboard. Then they said at the end of the program, the main organizer gave away prizes and he thanked everybody. Now can you see, there were children for whom these questions were not asked. What happened? We played football. But for children who were asked the questions, they have noticed so much in detail. Now, I asked the children another thing. Tell me, what can you do? Father, I'm able to do this, I'm able to do that. And then I said, okay, do during your regular games. That's all the instruction I gave them. 3 weeks later, benefactors had come down from Europe. And I said, now you organize a tournament in honor of these benefactors. And what I noticed stunned me. I just gave them an instruction. I didn't give them any guidance. In their little group, there were 40 boys. So some took the place of the compere. One took the place of the referee. Another was in charge of the scoreboard. Another was in charge of organizing and refereeing the teams. What surprised me is what we hadn't done before. They got chairs for the chief guest. Please sit down here, please sit down there, in style. Then they got these boys, they got the chief guest, they lined the boys up, which we hadn't done before, shake hands with each one, got each boy to tell their names. Then they refereed the game, kept everything on the scoreboard. At the end, they organized all the teams together, had a prayer service in thanksgiving to the benefactors. They made a thank you card, and they also brought gifts for the benefactors. How old were they? 6th standard children. So, from my experience, that little things that we do, it looks so silly just asking those questions. But when you ask those questions, children's mind begin to work in a productive way. They are mentally organizing what they are seeing, and if they have basic skills, they would be able to implement it. So don't say small children can't do this. 6th standard children did all this without instruction, just by attentively observing what other people were doing. To carry this further, 3 or 4 of these boys didn't have either of their parents. It was an orphanage. I told them, stay in the boarding. And during the entire boarding, we conducted a summer club for children of the locality. They were now 8th standard students. These children took charge of all the logistics. They sat with us for the planning. They understood the whole thing. What games, they would mark the playgrounds. They would keep the equipment ready, the games, the equipment ready. They kept the scores, entered it on the computer. And after some time, when they had that basic skill, we gave them to referee and organize for the smaller children. So these children, without too much of pushing, learned all these skills by doing, just by observing and encouraging them to do. I'm so happy to say that these were orphan children who had nothing on their own. Of them, 1 month ago, one of these boys took me to bless his flat, which he has purchased on his own, a flat costing 30 lakhs. Another boy, and I know he put his thing on Facebook, where he says he's a manager in a company in, I think, Australia or New Zealand. I can't take credit for what these children have done later in life. What I can say is, it seems to me that what we built up in these children during the earlier years has built the base and the confidence for them to move forward. How they handle the rest of their journey on their own, I don't know. But probably they had developed skills. As one of these fellows told me, Father, everything that you learned in the boarding, we were able to do and manage our lives later. That's why the importance of organizing. Okay, the next slide. Now, among smaller children, say for example, 5th standard children, an important thing of organizing takes place in terms of observing and in doing small tasks. So for example, the small tasks are like arranging a school bag, arranging a desk. Like when I came to these children in the boarding, I would ask them, open your desk, let me see what's inside. I'd see all the books heaped up there. They were small children. There's no use shouting at them and say, put your books in order. They don't know how to put their books in order. So I would tell them, okay, now we are going to observe this. If one of the older boys had a well-arranged desk, I would take all of them, come and see. How is this arranged? You like? How is your desk arranged? You like? No. You want to become like that? Yes. So then I would give them tips. Take all your textbooks and arrange them in order. Keep your maths books, your science books, your language books. So English, Hindi, Marathi. Organize them, put them in order, keep them in your desk. Similarly with your notebooks. Here is where you will keep your pencil box, your stationery. They had a little locker, a drawer locker. Now that was the basics of organizing. So parents can teach children simple things. I gave this tip to a mother of a child who was really disorganized. And the mother asked the child, put your locker in order. So she was sitting down there for 20 minutes. And then the mother asked, what happened? Say, Mama, I don't know where to start. So then I told the mother, very good place. At least she knows she doesn't know where to start. Give her the tips. Organize these clothes here, these clothes here. First, how to fold your clothes, how to organize them, how to put them in your locker. So these are simple organizing things that we can teach children to do. Or even in the kitchen, to organize crockery. So for example, the plates, the quarter plates, the spoons, the knives. Now these are simple organizational skills. What I noticed about this, the crucial thing is this: it creates a mental space where a child learns order and organization. And I noticed that when we were giving children physical tasks to do like this, children were beginning to organize their mental ideas more carefully. So for example, in a written composition, there was better sequence, it was in order, the ideas were better classified according to different types. So physical organization again got transferred to mental organization in terms of essays that can be done. So please don't look down on physical activity. During this middle childhood age, children are at the concrete operational phase. They learn things through doing concrete activity, but it's not lost. They learn to transfer that learning to more abstract situations like writing an essay. Now, from simple organization, we take the children to more complex organization. So, complex organization is like organizing the study. So let me once again share with you this experiment that I did with the same group of children, 6th standard. Very weak educational background, very poor in their studies, and I only looked at it this way: if I give these children the basic helps, they are likely to carry it further. So some simple tips of study are what I did like this. I told them, when you are in the class, take note of all the homework that your teachers give you. So first they have to jot down the homework. Then when they come back into the boarding, I would actually sit with them and tell them, how many homeworks has teacher given you? Okay. How many of these are memorizing things that you have to learn by heart? How many of these things are actual homeworks like written composition that you have to do? I'd get them write it out. Then I would tell them, prioritize your task, because I noticed that when these children in the boarding came there, they would enthusiastically get down to do their homework. But guess what was the first homework? Drawing. So the drawing book is out and they are busy drawing, and the rest of the evening goes with their drawing. You can't find fault with them, they are doing drawing, that's their homework. But the thing is, are they attending to the whole sequence? So when I would get them to do this, I would get them to organize, okay, what are your homeworks? What needs to be studied? What needs to be done? Then I gave them simple tips for memorizing. How do you memorize? I began to teach them mnemonics, like doing, these mind maps. And I was surprised that some of these 6th standard kids, they came up with new methods of memorizing which I had never thought before. So their creativity is stimulated. So ways of memorizing, methods of study. Then most of them didn't know how to do a homework. So I would explain to them, if there are questions the teacher has given you to write, I explain them how to read the text, how to address the question, and how to write the answers. I began usually with one-word answers. Okay? I read a passage, explain it to them, and ask them a question. Give me one-word answers. Then I would ask them, after that, give me one-line answers. Then later, give me 3-line answers. So in this way, I help them how to do the homework. No question of doing it for them, that doesn't work. You have to show them how to do it. Then, at the end, I would tell them, end of the study time in the evening, the bigger boys would help them. Everything that they have done, revise and memorize. And then, towards the time of the unit test, already 2 weeks before, say which subjects are there. I would already, in 2 weeks before, get them revise the past portion while also doing the portion for the day. I noticed that after doing this for about 3 months' time, the children slowly began doing it on their own without any help. Initially, it was difficult, but I had to take them patiently through each step. Once they learnt it, they had learnt the basic of organizing their study. 6th standard children, most of them 10 and 11 years old. Okay. So this is a further organization tip that you can give them. Now you can get them to extend organization towards planning. This can be easily done in the home and in the family. So for example, include the child in a planning activity. So for example, if there is something like shopping, I was doing it, I think, from the time I was in the 4th standard. So if there is a shopping list, make a shopping list. Vegetables, groceries, where are they available? What is the route you will take? How much does it cost? How to manage the money and how to manage the change? And how to arrange everything in your bag without damaging what you are bringing home. Simple planning and organization and implementation. This can be done already during middle child. Similarly, organizing a birthday party, a family outing, get the children involved in the whole process. They are not dumb. They are probably smarter than us. They only need that initial push. Now we are slowly moving into how we can orient the children towards career issues. For example, get the children to understand what their abilities are and get them to name their abilities. It's important for children, if a child knows he or she is good at something, she is more likely to use that skill and carry it further. So for example, a child who is imaginative, writes stories, can do picturesque drawings, is a creative child. So we get the child to understand, I have a creative ability. Other children are logical. They can think in a very stepwise, organized manner. Some are logical, organized. Other children are friendly. They make friends, they communicate easily. Other children are observant, still other children are helpful. Get them to understand the basic strengths of their personality. Say, one child can be introverted, but very friendly and very intuitive. So, you can already get children to understand their basic understanding of their personality. When I spoke about smaller children, I said identify their hobbies. Now, we can carry that idea of hobby further to the benefit of that child enormously. So, for example, if the child is interested in sports, so ask the child, which sport are you interested in? Okay, football, very good. So now I'm getting the child to make associations. I will ask the child, find out what are the dimensions of a football pitch, a full-size football pitch. So a child is not just playing football, the child is learning something about the game. The proportion of the pitch, the length, the breadth, the middle line, half line, the quarter line. Then I ask them, what skills does a football player need to play effectively? So they go and observe. Maybe to kick, to halt, to dribble, to head, to throw. Now they are beginning to observe. Then I will ask them, can you learn the rules of the football game? Don't simply do what the referee is saying when he blows the whistle. Can you follow the rules? Learn the rules of football. Maybe at a later stage, learn the names of players. Children like to know the names of cricketers or things. What are the names of good local players, good national players, good international players? The small children even will say Messi, they want a Messi football shirt. Okay, they want a Ronaldo football shirt. Get them to learn the names of players. Okay? Then, if they are in a football team and they are playing tournaments, I will ask them, no, don't just go for the tournament. Learn how does your your boss enroll a child for a tournament. So the child is also learning enrollment procedures for games. Okay? Or I can also ask them, what is the role of the coach? What is the role of the referee? I'm already introducing the basics of career through hobbies. So whatever the hobby, I just gave you an example of football. You can use any hobby and you can get the child to develop and to creatively think the other issues associated with that hobby. Now, from hobbies, we can get the child to observing professionals. So, for example, I will ask the child, notice your teacher. What does the teacher do? So the child is beginning to observe the tasks the teacher is actually performing. She will give instructions, she will explain a lesson, she will give homework, she will correct homework, she will prepare the mark list, she will guide us in extracurricular activities. When you ask these questions, the child is actually learning to observe the roles played by different professionals. Similarly, at a visit to a hospital, the doctor, what are the different types of doctors, what are they doing? Similarly, what is a mechanic doing, a computer specialist or an accountant? Now you carry that further. Of all these things that you observe, say of the teachers, what the teachers do, what do you like? I like to explain things like the teacher. What do you not like about the teacher's work? I don't like correcting homeworks. So the child is already learning to balance and know that in any occupation, there is something that will be helpful and something that the child will find to be challenging. So the child is developing a sense that an occupation is not rosy all the way, that it has its advantages and it has its challenges as well. Another thing when we talk about career guidance is that employers generally look for participation among children. So you can get the child to participate in as many activities as possible. Elocution, sports, singing, campaigns, dramatics. Through participation, the child is building skills as well as feelings of self-confidence. Through everything that you do, if you are guiding and interacting with the child, you are developing a rapport with the child and the child is developing a trust in you. This is the most important thing to guide the child through the next teenage years, which are generally turbulent. We also guide the child to develop a moral sense. So for example, if a child is doing certain activities where the child is hurting others, rather than hitting the child, we could ask the child, when you do something like this, how is it affecting the other child? Or if that same child had to do it to you, how would it affect you? So getting the child to reflect on his or her behavior is also developing a moral sense, a spiritual sense. So generally, we develop a spiritual sense by, teaching prayers. But a very crucial thing can be to help the child develop a deeper connection with God through informal ways. So when you're initiating a child through, say, a study for the evening, you can get the child and say, let us pray for God's help in doing my homework and my study well today. At the end, if you have managed it well, God, thank you for leading me through this study time. So, you're connecting the child's activity with prayer. That's the way Don Bosco became a prayerful child. When Don Bosco was actually in the fields, he would pray, thank you for this, bless all those people who are giving me this job, and let this corn begin to grow. Whatever I am cultivating, let it take fruit. So that's again praying for activities, praying for others, giving thanks, and finally to help the child also to reach out to others in different ways, which is another expression of prayer. So through all these ways, we are actually helping the child to develop a whole series of qualities that will carry the child to life. They also prepare the child for the next stage of what we will call career mark. And it will take off, the next stage will take off more strongly if this has been built up during the early years. Okay, that's it. With this, I conclude my presentation. Are there any questions that you would like to ask? The middle got a little extended because I took some part of the early childhood as well. Are there any questions you would want to ask? See, the techniques that we have done are not new. The techniques that I've spoken are not new. I don't think we need anything really fancy to take things forward. I think from what I would notice, the smallest and the most ordinary things make the biggest and the most cumulative differences over time. So, like what I mentioned for the previous group, I'm not going to speak of anything extraordinary. I'm speaking of the most ordinary things that can make extraordinary differences. Like, just to give you an example, I spoke about organizing and I said how well these children have progressed. By contrast, there was another group of boys whom we had taken through an extended period of coaching, and at the end of it all, I asked them, what did you notice? All that they noticed, this boy shot the goal out, that fellow kicked it there. They had not observed any of the procedures that were there. So you can give them all the experiences. If you don't do these simple things like ask them, what did you observe? What have you learned? What could you do? The children are not likely to assimilate what they have learned and extend it outside. So this is nothing extraordinary. Because I'm not speaking to a group of professionals, I'm speaking to a group of parents who can capitalize on ordinary things to produce extraordinary results. Some children pick it up automatically. Children who are gifted will automatically do it on their own. But most average children would probably struggle through areas like this. So I think it would be beneficial in that sense. Okay? Yes.
Something which I want to ask for. We have two children. Suppose there are two children in the family. Around the same age, or the same age. One is good, really good, picking up like activities like how to communicate. The other is not.
Yes.
And one is suppose for studies. Read the lesson immediately, will understand the whole thing. The other one cannot.
Yes.
In this case, one child feels inferior
Yes.
compared to the other.
Yes.
How to handle that situation?
Okay. Thank you for asking that question. In a family, you would have two children of unequal abilities. Okay? One could be the fast and gifted child, the other could be the slow and struggling child. I think one basic thing that I have spoken of in the previous thing, the first thing, what not to do. What not to do is don't compare, let the parent not compare this child with the other child. What not to do. Okay? Second, what not to do, don't try to push this child to catch pace with the other child. Because this child's ability is different, this child's ability is different. Okay? The key issues to find out if this child is slow, is there anything holding this child back? Or, as I said, is there some sensory issue? Is there some comprehension, understanding issue that is there? Or is it just natural slowness? If the child is suffering from anything that is keeping the child back, then you may need to get the child investigated and get the child help. If the child is just slower than the rest but doesn't have any other impairment, then the next thing is to be a little more patient with this child. So in the sense, first of all, don't compare, don't expect this child to catch up, just take the child where he or she is and help the child through her own phases, building up slowly. I have noticed this, especially when I have children in the boarding. They are all of the same age of different capacities. What I would do there is to spend time with these children, spending more time with them on the basics, like the basics of what I've spent. That's why it's not extraordinary. Vocabulary, framing sentences, describing situations, then slowly extending it there. The brighter child would have picked it up spontaneously. The slower child needs assistance to be helped across this area. What I noticed is that if I give these slower children the assistance they need, they may not have perceived something. If I can help them in the organization of their study, then over a period of time, they will gradually develop two things: a sense of confidence. Every time they are able to better their own performance, they develop a sense of competence. And I can manage it. They may not be as fast as the other, but they are faster than what they were previously. One question that I would generally ask in the boarding, every month I would ask, what have you learned this month that you were not able to do the previous month? Not what that child or that child has been able to do, what you have been able to do that you were not able to do earlier. So when you compare that child's activity progress to her own past performance, the child slowly begins to develop a sense, yes, I can also do it and I can also move forward. So when the parent is with the child, helping that child through the process, a very crucial thing is happening. The child is feeling, yes, there's somebody with me, I'm not alone, I'm competent, and I am confident. I will take my own time, but I will slowly catch up. Maybe I will not reach there, but I will not be far behind. So at least there is no destructive effect. There is no kind of feeling of, there is no kind of lack of building up of skills. There is progress, it is slow, it is steady. The child feels competent, comfortable, and does not feel inferior to somebody else. So I think it's a configuration of things that we would need to do. I noticed this there. Then if there is a smarter child, it would be. I did this when I was teaching them the band. Most of them were orphan children. One would pick up very fast, and I would always pair them. Each instrument, they are in pairs. One stronger boy and one weaker boy. What I noticed at the start, the boys who are of better capacity, they would learn fast, then they would start roaming all over the place. Said, no, teamwork. Two of you have to play together. If that child hasn't learned, you have failed. So you have to sit and teach that child. So now I'm also teaching teamwork. I'm helping this person to be a teacher, and I'm also helping that child to be compassionate. So the way in which I guide that process is very crucial. So I realized that over a period of time, children who were slower slowly began to catch up with the others. To give you a simple example, I did something called choral recital. I gave all the children to memorize 4 lines and they had to recite it as a team. In the beginning, only one child was saying and all the others would be uncomfortably looking around. Very good, you did your teamwork, but you carry on the activity. After a few days, these fellows who couldn't get it, at least they were listening. They were not fooling with each other. They were listening. So they were admiring somebody else. After a few more days, they were trying to say those things by themselves. By about 2 or 3 weeks, they were actually learning and saying it together. So this group activity where you don't criticize, where you only encourage, when you observe, very good. Now you at least noticing. What did you notice? How was he doing? They experiment. They slowly tend to catch up. They may not be where the other ones will reach, but at least they are not left behind. So this is what I can suggest for this process. Thank you for asking. Very, very good question.
In the current time of people getting distracted with the use of mobiles and screen time that the kids are involved in, and either watching TV or using the mobile for the online classes.
Yes.
So there's a lot of distraction which is happening for the kids.
Yes, yes.
So the focus on the studies of the writing part or the reading part, that habit is actually lost.
Yes.
So how do you manage that we rebuild
Okay, I think it's like this. Uh, that's why I said I am not the expert on this, but these are my intuitions. I've noticed that because of online activities, sometimes children are getting hooked onto the cell phone and they don't want to move out of it. Okay, they have developed some competence there. One way, can you use it to create and not just to consume? So in one way, you only see what is happening and you're becoming passive. As I said, can we ask them, you make your small presentation. So when they become a creator rather than a consumer, you're already shifting the direction of that person's activity. That's one thing. The next thing that I could think of as a practical thing, maybe, forcefully pulling. I saw a child when the mother was this thing, I'm not going to do, throwing a tantrum, you give me the cell phone, cell phone, cell phone. I said, what else does the child like? The child likes to play with his friend. I said, don't pull out the cell phone, just take him and make him play with the friend. So the child slowly is dissociating a pleasurable experience to a more wholesome activity, which is bonding with another child. Or you direct that child to, say, play a game which she is interested in, or play a musical instrument that she is interested in. So it's not just forcefully wrenching, but it's also probably guiding. Use this now to create your own video of your game, create your own video of yourself playing, take daddy's picture, create your own video, especially if the child is on the middle childhood. So then the child is using technical abilities, but as creator, which doesn't make the child passive. So that's creating and initiating a new process in the mind. That's what I can think. As I said, I'm not the expert in the area, but definitely this is it.
The grandparents tend to be more overprotective.
Yes.
Overprotective, the parents will say something, you do this thing.
Yes.
We are exposing them to the world. The grandparents will always know, you don't do this, this will happen. How to handle such a situation?
I think that's for the parent and the grandparent to. Yes, that is true. That's.
One of the biggest for the development of the child.
Yes. Because one is becoming overprotective and is not allowing the experimentation and independence to take forward. And the other one wants the independence to take forward, but so the child could also get into a conflict over there between, being at home and between engaging in healthy experimentation. I can't think of anything except that it would need to be settled between the two. What we would definitely need to know in terms of stages of development, as the child is getting older, it's crucial for the child to develop a sense of independence, ability to do things on one's own, while also taking necessary cautions. I think the point of communication is this. What is the older person worried about? What are the concerns that he has? And how can those concerns be addressed while the child is engaging in some form of new experimental? I think that would be the point between the two. Between caution as well as experimentation. And when both are satisfied, okay, the precautions are taken care of. Initially, the child will also be confused, but over a period of time, caution as well as experimentation will tend to blend. That's what I can think of.
So, my dear parents, I hope it was an enriching morning for you. How did you find the session? Did you find some new insights that triggered something that has struck you, which you like to carry forward? ऐसा कुछ प्रभावित हुआ है आपको? Yes? Okay. So it gives a little pulse of how effective it has been. No? So it's a question of now implementing this thing and avoiding the pitfalls for the future of your children. So I'd like to thank Father Joy for sharing his expertise and his resources and these very profound steps forward that we could carry forward in our families for our children. Okay. This evening at 5 o'clock, there's the specific career marg orientation for the parents. And I hope that you will look forward to also getting your children reaching to the 8th standard to also be part of that program. Okay, so once their foundations are set properly here, it will help them to have a better analysis and assessment and awareness of themselves, where they will get to know what their interests are, what their skills are, what their value systems are, and how that can be connected to the future careers that could open up as avenues for them in life. Okay, so thank you very, very much. God bless you all. We'll say glory be and we will go, okay? Glory be to the Father and to the Son and to the Holy Spirit, as it was in the beginning, is now, and ever shall be, the world without end. Amen. The Lord be with you. May Almighty God bless you all, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. God bless you.